Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 171, Echoes of the Orient, one of the foremost theosophical works ever written by William Judge. He was the vice president, actually, of their order for a long time during its heyday. Link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links are to my books, blogs, and if you're interested in studying theosophy, I have about a half a dozen works on the subject from the Theosophical Society mainly. Most of them are under the spirituality header because they represent a mainline religious view as opposed to specifically spirituality. Like the spiritualist works like, here's occultism. With Theosophy, it's like, this is our order, our organization. If it's organized, it generally goes under the spirituality header. It goes along with religious manuscripts, because it is, technically speaking. Now, of course, Theosophy is an interesting concept. There are certain things within it that I agree with. It adopts the Hindu version of reincarnation mostly, although it is modified slightly for a Western format. It adopts kind of the belief in karma, but not really, not in the maybe absolutist sense, and certain other beliefs as well. Now, this is the primary introduction to Theosophy work that you can read. Highly recommended. It's fairly full length. I think it's like 70-something pages. It's fairly beefy. It's broken up into sections. It covers what Theosophy is, some of its basic beliefs and tenets, and towards the end it's like, well, here's where you can write to join our order, and you know, like stuff like to get our books and things. Now, most of those addresses, I believe, are totally defunct, and certainly all of the individuals you could contact, they're long dead. This work comes from the late 1800s. Nobody from that era now is alive, sadly. It'd be quite a show if you could talk to them. Maybe the Theosophist should set up a seance so we can talk to William Judge. And his middle name, I think it's pronounced Quan, quite an interesting middle name. I'm not sure if he decided to do that for mystic purposes or if that was a given middle name. But it's an interesting work, and definitely if you're interested in Theosophy or its offshoots, because Theosophy isn't to be seen in a vacuum. Of course, you have Steiner, sort of the mid-Theosophical era, becomes a higher-up schismatic, leaves the movement, forms Anthroposophy, actually, modifies the Theosophical doctrine, actually becomes arguably more powerful than all of the Theosophists, made a bunch of schools, actually, some of which still function around Germany and in areas in Central Europe. Quite an interesting individual. Blavatsky had spawned a huge core of literature. She did a lot of like seances, automatic writing, that sort of stuff. She also delved into sort of the mystery school Eastern traditions. And really, this is the seed of what later becomes the New Age. Because that Eastern tradition coming into the West, it goes underground very much at the end of the 20s. The Great Depression, World War II, early nifty 50s. It isn't really until the Flower Child era that a lot of this stuff comes back into fashion. All that hippie fashion, really, when we see stereotypical pictures of hippies and them using drugs and stuff, doesn't it remind you kind of like their great-grandma in an opium den in the late 1800s? Doing a seance? It's really the same thing. It's really just a modified version of something far older, because history repeats itself. There are only certain themes that humankind can actually take. It's very interesting, because that, oddly enough, fits in with the Theosophical doctrine of sort of the cycles of the world. It talks a little bit about basic Hindu doctrine, because Hinduism, or especially early on, was the main sort of Eastern force that was being spoken of. You get some Buddhistic doctrine as well, but not quite as much. Later on, a little bit more. And then also Persian, ancient lore from the Middle East, Persia and places like that. So it's an interesting book altogether. If you're interested in a basic primer on Theosophy, you're not going to find another work that's better than this. Blavatsky's works are like way longer, much more convoluted. Steiner schisms off, so his works aren't quite as purist maybe. William Judge's works generally, and some of these others early on, really form the backbone of what becomes Theosophy. So again, link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links to my books, blogs. That's about all. Peace out.